a woman who has been raped, I think when we engage that individual who says, I was raped, and so I'm seeking an abortion for this reason, I think while we still don't never want to compromise truth, and rape does not justify murdering a child, we want to be sensitive in that conversation with this individual, while still never giving ground to say that it's okay for that child to lose its life for the sin of the father. Okay? And then also, it only represents about 1% or less than 1% of those who are going to seek an abortion. And honestly, it's usually thrown out. So if we run into an individual that is their case, they have been raped, and so they're struggling with this, wanting to end the life of this child because they don't want to carry it because of what it may bring to them emotionally to do so, because of that they were a victim of rape. If that's the case, obviously, again, we want to be sensitive to that. We want to address them with grace, with humility, with compassion, I should say, for them. But in many cases, that's not the case. A lot of people are just bringing that up. And if you were to ask them, okay, let me grant that less than 1% to you, put that aside, the other 99%, would you be willing to end that and say that kind of abortion is bad? Most of them would say, well, no, I'm for it, right? So it's really not even their argument when you consider rape. Again, statistically, it's less than 1% of women have abortion because of rape. And but still, there is. It's less than 1%. So there are some that's the reason why they are seeking to end the life of the child. But it is never right to justify murdering a child for the crime of the father. And there have been cases where there have been women who have been raped and decided that they were going to give birth to that child. Some, they give the child up. Some kept the child, and it was a huge blessing to them through that. What God done through the act of that vile, heinous act of rape, keeping that child, that then is a blessing to them, right? And so it doesn't justify the murdering of a child based upon the sins of the father. And if you take that to its logical conclusion, you would have to take that even further. Let's say a woman is with a man and they have a child, and this child is 3 or 4 years old, and then this man and this woman break up and he ends up raping her, and that child looks just like him. So now every time she looks at this 3 or 4 year old child, it reminds her of this man who raped her. Does that mean then that she should be able to end that child's life? I'd say no, because the value of that child's life, it seems like when it comes to abortion, is because you cannot see the baby in the womb. It's as if that life doesn't exist. And I think that we as Christians have not done a good job of kind of relaying that the baby in the womb is life. It's always after the birth of the baby. And so, because I don't think we've relayed that really well, people have it in their mindset, when you don't see it, it's easier to kill it than when you're actually in the presence of this child in front of you. But even a 5-year-old or 2-year-old, 3-year-old, when they see a pregnant woman, they say, oh, she's going to have a baby. They recognize that. But for somehow there's this disconnect with us as adults or older individuals who don't seem to think about it in the same way. That when you lose, when I know for a fact that a woman who has a miscarriage feels that when she loses the life of that child. It's not something that just, I lost this child and I go on my life without any thought of it. No, it's felt because a child has been lost, right? But then there's this disconnect with those who think it's okay to abort your child, to murder your child. And I think some of that has to do with consciences being seared. As the Bible says, he turns them over to a debased mind. where people then believe the lies. They start to believe and call that which is evil good and that which is good evil. And their conscience is so seared that it doesn't affect them in the same way. So the other thing is life of the mother. And again, this is a small percentage of this happening. I was telling you guys before the show, I was listening to a doctor who had made the statement that if you can get, and I know this from a personal experience of a family member who was high risk, and this individual had to be put on bed rest for a while because they want to try to get you to at least to a certain point in the pregnancy, so that then after 21 weeks, if you're still high risk and this baby needs to come out, you can induce the labor so that it naturally you're inducing it so that it's a natural labor or a natural birth or a C-section, which then in many of those cases the life of the mother and the life of the baby can be spared and live. And then sometimes, unfortunately, that child may die, but it will die naturally rather than going in and pulling this child limb from limb, which also can cause a lot of serious problems to the mother as well, right? And so this idea, though, that the health of the mother is another reason why people will have this objection. When we look at this, again, I know many mothers and fathers who would give their life for their children. And this has kind of been flipped on its head, where, as you were saying, we think of the woman's life being more valuable than the life of the child. And I think morally, biblically, we would try to do everything we can to save both, not just choosing one over the other.